So we got a chance to catch up with Chuck Denowh, the policy director for United Property Owners of Montana, before he heads into a legislative meeting later this morning at the Capitol. Chuck, thanks for joining us here, especially last minute.
You bet. Great to be with you, Aaron.
Yeah, the headline from your guest opinion column that I see is in at least some of the statewide newspapers this morning: free roaming bison, EIS draws battle lines in Montana, and FWP is on the wrong side. It looks like the Bullock administration in his final year in office is trying to push kind of a far left radical agenda here.
That's right. Yeah, and Governor Bullock's been looking for a legacy to leave. He doesn't have much to show for his 8 years in office. This might be one of the last big things he attempts to do is force free roaming bison in Montana.
I remember when they first started pushing this free roaming bison concept, and I saw it early on as a giveaway to the foreign billionaires, the European billionaires that are funding organizations like the American Prairie Reserve. Is this is just a handout basically to those who want to turn Montana into the playground for the rich. When they first started this whole free roaming bison conversation here in Montana, when FWP started this, they were met with overwhelming opposition across the state.
Well, and it still is the same. They haven't been able to move the needle at all. There's still overwhelming opposition. The APR derives virtually all of its support from outside Montana. You mentioned the wealthy billionaires from Germany and elsewhere. That's really who's pushing this, who wants to transform this enormous area of Montana from what it is today, thriving agriculture communities. They want to wipe that off the map and introduce an enormous private park in the middle of the state.
Which basically means kicking all the ranchers off the land, kicking the farmers off the land, removing these incredible communities here in Montana, as we've documented, as we've told the story about the American Prairie Reserve, and this what could be just disastrous for not only Montana's economy but for our small towns and our great communities. So FWP, I know. Look, they're run by Governor Bullock appointees. The Fish and Wildlife Commission is also manned by Bullock and Schweitzer appointees basically in the past few years. And so, but it makes you worry about what else they're going to try to shove down Montanans' throats here in the final days. I know they've been trying to limit the shoulder season elk hunts and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And, for APR, free roaming bison are really critical to the plan, and they can't do it without FWP. FWP had an opportunity to pump the brakes and say, there's too much opposition to this. Let's just freeze this. Allow APR to continue to have their domestic herd of bison. And continue that way. But this radical plan to introduce free roaming bison where they can go onto anybody's property, and those Montana landowners would have to just pocket the costs that are associated with having free roaming bison on their property. That's just a non-starter. FWP knows it, but they're going ahead with this plan anyhow.
Chuck, I know the farmers and the ranchers and the folks who know how important these small towns are, even to the big towns, that they really drive the economy of our larger cities, Great Falls and Billings and places like that. We know how important this issue is. To the average Joe who's maybe just driving down the interstate, maybe even just passing through Montana right now, how would you explain to them why free roaming bison is such a threat to our communities and to our economy?
Well, bison are not like other wildlife. They have the potential to cause a lot of damage to property. You think forage, you think cropland, even physical property like fences and outbuildings. They can be very destructive animals, but more so, they're a known vector for disease. Brucellosis, chief among those, but other diseases as well. That presents a threat not just to the livestock industry, but to other wildlife populations as well. So, in protecting our public lands, our public wildlife populations, free roaming bison is a threat across the board.
So the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks now formally recommending the introduction of free-roaming bison. Chuck, you point out, hey, just last session, the Montana legislature established a clear policy opposed to free-roaming bison. What's the good news here, though, that FWP may be making this recommendation, but that's not the end of the story?
That's right, and FWP needs to remember who sets the policy for the state of Montana. That's what we elect the legislature to do. And in bipartisan fashion, last session, they made it crystal clear what the policy of the state should be. FWP is now completely ignoring that, but the legislature is going to have the last word on this. They come back a year from now, and I think we're going to see some even stronger protections against free-roaming bison.
All right, and then of course we'll have a new governor come next session as well, so that'll be could potentially be a game changer here as well. Chuck Denowh with the United Property Owners of Montana, great to have you. Thanks for calling us, especially last minute.
You bet. Thank you, Aaron.